Good evening, and thanks for staying. My name is Dwandalyn Reese. I am the Curator of Music and Performing Arts at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And I am honored to be here with our distinguished panel. Please, one more round of applause for who we have here. And let me just do a quick introduction, starting on my far left. We have Ryan McAdams, who was the conductor of this evening's orchestra. He's quickly one of the most exciting and versatile conductors of his generation, equally prized as a symphonic, operatic, and contemporary music conductor. He is the first ever recipient of the Sir George Solti Emerging Conductor Award. Next to Mr. McAdams, we have Jason Moran. Composer of the film Selma. He's a pianist, composer, and educator, and also the Kennedy Center's artistic director for jazz. Next, we have Ms. Ava DuVernay, director. Director of the drama Selma, which garnered 4 Golden Globe nominations and 2 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Ms. DuVernay's most recent feature, 13th, was one of the most critically acclaimed films of 2016. And we're all familiar with her directorial work on the acclaimed series Queen Sugar and looking forward to A Wrinkle in Time. Next, we have Congressman John Lewis. I don't think Congressman Lewis needs an introduction. But I will say he has dedicated his life to protecting human rights, securing civil liberties, and building what he calls a beloved community. He's an icon of the civil rights movement and served as president of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and led the peaceful march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama on March 7, 1965. Awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011, he also took up a cause that started 100 years ago to create a museum dedicated to the history of African Americans. That dream became a reality last year, and we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary this weekend. And finally, we have Greg Hedgepath, supervising sound editor and sound designer. Mr. Hedgepath has worked in film and television sound for more than 20 years. He studied sound recording at the Eastman School of Music and attended the University of Maryland. It's a little local. So I want to thank our panel, and we're just going to get right into it, so to speak. We're going to take this opportunity to talk about the film, but since this was really a musical event, we wanted to talk about music and the sounds of Selma, how music evokes and really helps the interpretation of a film. And I wanted to start with Congressman Lewis. You are a witness and you were a participant in these events. How, in your experience, how did the sounds and songs and music, what do you remember from that time in when you recall this event?
Well, I've said on many occasions, thank you. Madam Director, thank you for all of your help. I've said on many occasions that if it hadn't been for music, the civil rights movement would have been like a bird without wings. Music, it brought us together. It created a sense of solidarity. When we've been beaten, arrested, and jailed, sometimes someone would just start humming or singing a little song. People would just improvise. Someone would be marching from Selma to Montgomery after Bloody Sunday, would have a little guitar and just start playing it. If we would sing something like, "Oh, Wallace, you never can jail us all. Segregation is about to fall." Well, I woke up this morning with my mind staying on freedom. And some of the young people, some of the children, young kids, elementary school, middle school, high school, created a little song called the Berlin Wall. So there's a wall in Berlin. There's also a Berlin Wall in Selma. During the march, we heard the unbelievable blast of the tear gas. We heard the horses coming, and we heard people being beaten with nightsticks. But we had something within that kept us going. I thought I was going down that bridge. I thought I saw death. But I survived. And if I had to do it all over again, so I tell you some of the music in Selma make me cry. I teared up tonight. And we need music now more than ever before. We need the arts. We need the arts. I run into people sometime since the election. I hear people say, "Congressman, I feel so down. I need a hug." I said, "I need a hug too." So sometimes you just have to sing a little song and dance. Enjoy yourself. Thank you.
In a little while, I want to get back. What is interesting to me is we're not going to talk about just music, but we're talking about a historical event and how music and history work and inform each other. As audience members or viewers of film, I think it's easy to forget how a sound, how the background, a composition, a tone can really influence our experience and interpretation of the film. And I just wanted each of you to just share a few of your thoughts about the role you played and how you worked together to create a sonic landscape for this historical story. You could start? Yes.
Well, my job as the sound supervisor is to basically take Ava's vision and just give it skin. And so when they shoot the movie, a lot of people don't realize that the job of the person shooting the sound is to get the actors' voices to the exclusion of everything else. So when they shoot the scene on the bridge, you don't want to hear all the people running around and all of the footsteps and things. So we put all that back in. And I was just talking to Congressman Lewis backstage about it, and he was describing a lot of the things that I thought you would hear. So, for example, for the people screaming, we bring in what's called a loop group. And the loop group are actors who act out background voices. And in this case, because I wanted it to be as realistic as possible, instead of recording them in a studio, I took them to an old, it's basically a depression somewhere in LA where some land had failed. But anyway, you go down in this depression, all the sound of the city goes away, and all you can hear is the voices. So we had people running by the microphone. I was describing the scenes to them, and as I was saying to somebody backstage, when the cop when the camera turns, you see the cop hit the guy on the bridge. This guy who was doing the acting of the voice was literally on the ground begging, and there was another actor over him as if he was going to hit him. They were dragging each other across the grass and pushing each other and squeezing each other. And all of that just added to the realism. So I felt that was my job, to just bring it, to bring that emotion and try to bring the feeling as much as possible.
Thank you.
Every once in a while, you should answer your phone because you don't know who's calling. And one time, my number, I didn't know what the number was, and it was Ava, and she started talking about this film. And for me, it was, the way I look at jazz history is only in relationship to what is actually happening at the time. So what's happening in 1925 in Washington, D.C., when Duke Ellington is here? What's happening in 1965 when John Coltrane is playing, and he makes a song for the 4 little girls that were killed in that church bombing, and he calls it Alabama. And at every decade, there's a marker of how jazz has marked where the country is, its flaws and its beauty. And then looking at this story as she started to explain what she was envisioning, I thought it was my goal to try to tie things together and also kind of let the audience know that I had their back. And to give them just enough to rely on, and hopefully by the end of the movie, enough spirit that they could walk out on and feel like they could enter back into society with action in mind rather than being passive. And so that was our conversation, and it was an extremely tedious and very stressful process working on this film because of, you just saw it, and but it was something that I felt was also part of what my aim is as a musician on the earth.
Well, first I just have to say you all look beautiful up here. It's just such a gorgeous crowd, and I can't believe all the seats are filled, like people actually came. So emotional to me. Anyway, this has been an extraordinary experience, very transformative for me. I haven't seen the film in 2 years. So to see it again, it felt like I was watching someone else's film. I could really, for the first time, not see everything I did, but just feel it deeply. And so thank you for that. Thank you to the Kennedy Center for that. When we're making a film, as a filmmaker, I have all different types of tools that I use. And when we're talking about the soundscape for a film, you have music that goes into 2 categories. You have composed music, and you have what we call source music, existing music, right? So you heard voices that I asked our music supervisor, a black woman named Morgan Rhodes, to pull music from the 60s during this period, music that we had not heard, music that might sound familiar, voices that might sound familiar, like B-sides is what I wanted, not things where you're like, oh, that's the hit from the time. So she was she was crate digging. She was going through the crates, finding these songs and bringing me hundreds of songs until we culled it down to the 14 or 16 or so you hear in the film. So that's one side of the music. The other side of the music is the composition. This is when you bring in original score, a composer. Now, one of the things I just like you to notice and understand is a huge rarity in Hollywood is two black men heading up departments in the rain. Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So the soundscape for the film on the music department is headed up by Morgan Rose, a black woman, Jason Moran, an exceptional composer and musician, and on the sound side, headed up by Greg Hedgepath, who did all of the sound that's inserted back into the film that we didn't record. And then on set, there's a recordist, and it was a man named Willie Burton, who's the African American with the most Oscar nominations that you've never heard of. His name is Willie Burton, and you've not heard of him because his category, 7 nominations, is in the category of sound. And so, and how important that is to my toolbox as a filmmaker. So when we talk about the soundscape of the film, filling this up and making it feel like that time, yes, I'm dealing with the costumes and the performances and the script and the production design, but sound is really everything you hear, every hit of the baton, every whoosh that goes past, every note that Jason plays, every source cue that Morgan brings in, and the way it's all mixed by Greg and his team is a part of the toolbox. And our goal was to evoke the time. When we can hear John Lewis say he wept during the film, that means that we were able to recall as a group a moment in history. That takes a very meticulous kind of carving with each instrument, right, that we have between the 4 departments. And so yeah, that's how we kind of came to what you hear.
Okay.
I was just going to say that as I was working on the film, fortunately, we had a lot of the source music to work with. You know, you made a lot of the great decisions early on. Some things changed. And as I remember, we had some temp cues. I think you gave us some temp cues. Temp cue is like a rough version of what the score is going to sound like, which helped my crew sonically to work with the music and to also stay out of the music's way, so we weren't using the same band of sounds to let the music come through because it was so powerful, and so we didn't obscure what you were trying to do. So when he was, for example, using the bass drum, and I just loved watching the guy play here, you know, we made sure we stayed out of the low register. Or, you know, when the horns are playing, they're kind of like in the upper mid, we'd use something in the low register or whatever just to make more room.
Jason, I read somewhere that you said something that the score needed to be felt, not just heard. And I wondered if you could kind of pick that apart a little bit, but what exactly you did as a composer to kind of get that feeling, that relationship, and then we'll kind of talk about the live performance a little bit.
I think, you know, in a film as powerful as this, with performances as powerful as this cast gave, you know, which we have to, I mean, the cast, I feel like, has a really difficult job to kind of manifest a part of history that has affected their life, right? So they have to go back into ancestral past and put that on screen. Not many people want to do that. And they did that, right? So they took that leap. All of them took that leap in those costumes and those lines in front of the camera. And then I thought but life doesn't happen with an orchestra walking around with you, right?
Mine does, I actually.
So it's important, but I always think that tones are kind of like living in people's minds at all times. If every person in here closed their mouth and their ears and listened just to what was in their head for a second, they would hear a tone, right? And some of these tones end up being what the orchestra would start to play, this kind of like, either it was a soft, searing tone that would just drive in, but it's to be more kind of in the background, because I thought those performances would just stay out of the dialogue's way, just really let that story just happen. One of the most beautiful times in the film is the car ride between John Lewis and Martin Luther King. and they're in this car together, and they're having this very heartfelt conversation about what it is to challenge one another and their expectations for one another. And, you know, and in a conversation like that where you feel people being vulnerable, 2 extremely powerful people, bold, brave, being vulnerable with each other in private, you know, like that's a certain kind of song, it's a certain kind of sound, and it's a certain kind of caress that music is able to do. better than words. That's why we depend on it so much. So I thought in certain moments the music needed to be like out there, and then 80% of the time it just needed to be in the back, just kind of connecting us and letting us know that everything is going to be cool. Just wait till the next scene when we get our feet back together.
Great.
But our collaboration was one that, it was really interesting because it was the first time that I'd worked. It was interesting. Like, I remember at one point I Googled composer because I'd had scores on my previous films, but this was a different kind. I worked on indie films where there was no money, and so beautiful black woman composer Catherine Bostick, I would give her like $2 and say, I'll just take anything you can give me. I'll take a little bit of piano, like whatever you want to give me. And there was so little time that I didn't have to, when I was making films for just so little money, I would call her in 2 days and say I need it because I've got a mixer who will do it for free, and she'd give me what she had and I put it in, and she was extraordinary. But this process with Jason, and you're working with a little bit more money, I was like, we got some days? And so it was over a series of months, and I really had to think, like, how does this process? And it was his first film as a composer, and my first time working with a composer on something that was much more sweeping. And so our process, as I've come to learn, nobody does it the way we do it in Hollywood, which is literally, he came into the editing room with me and my longtime friend and editor, Spencer Averick. I remember seeing in my head, me and Spencer at the monitor editing, and Jason in the corner. It looked like a little Casio thing. I don't know. Like looking at the picture, and as we were cutting, he was making things. And Jason and I also worked on 13th, which was an exceptional score as well. And I don't think anyone has our process, because our process is wild and crazy. Like you know what I mean? It's whenever we can find scraps of time, but it's also deeply emotional and very connected, a brother and sister-like relationship around these topics that mean so much to us. And so when his music comes in, his music will come in, and our sound editor matches it to the picture. Jason will say, start the violin here and end it here. It'll be time code on the film. He says, Ava, I think it starts here and ends here. And I'll say, yeah, I think it starts here. He'll be like, okay, you sure? Because I think it starts here. And I'll be like, I think it starts here. And then he'll have the little violin. I was like, I really like that. Can I have some more of that? He's like, oh, yeah, you can have some more of that. It'll come back. And that's like the process. Now and then it'll be something where it's just incredible and perfect I never thought of. Sometimes it'll come in, I'll say, Jason, that's not quite what I thought. But it's a beautiful collaboration, and to hear it, I can hear all those little decisions that we made together. And so to hear it, expressed through this orchestra live was, as I was listening, I could hear us debating and talking about each piece. And it was beautiful to witness today. So thank you for that. Yeah.
I know we don't all go through life with our own soundtrack, but I did want to ask Congressman Lewis, part of your life was put to a soundtrack, and did that evoke any kind of emotional response from you to see these scenes and your particular story illustrated through sound and music?
Well, throughout the film part that I witnessed tonight, and I've seen the film many, many times.
Yes.
With school children and their teachers. And each time when I hear Gloria, I cry. So what do you all do to make me cry? What? I can't take it. And I was at a little school in Atlanta, and a group of students started playing the song and started singing. The teachers started crying. The students started crying. And I was standing like a fool crying too. So what is it? What are the ingredients? How do you put it together?
I don't know, but I think, and for so many people, you connect the song with the emotion that you feel when you feel the film, when you watch the film. And so that's why the song won Best Song. You hear the song and you feel the movie. again, you remember the four little girls, you remember the bridge, you remember all of that, and you remember Dr. King giving the speech at the end, and you remember what happened to them all, and that's the part that breaks me down. What happened to them all? I hear you roar for Congressman Lewis, and you know, we weep for Viola Luiso, and you know, Jimmy Lee Jackson when he's murdered, and it all kind of culminates in that song. And so I think it's your sense memory. You just remember.
It's something that sort of pick you up and tell you at the same time, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Just believe, be hopeful, be optimistic. In spite of it all, you're going to survive.
But we need that now.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Ryan, let's talk about a little bit about tonight and the creative process, what it was like to do this live and relate to a film, and just tell us a little bit how this came about.
Sure. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I started working with an organization in New York. It's a contemporary music organization that started taking films that we all loved and respected and started performing the scores live to them. And I got interested in them. I'm primarily an opera conductor, so my most fascinating thing is to figure out how do people think of music as a storytelling device, and can we perform it like this where you have this enormous orchestra in front of the screen, so nothing could be more visually distracting short of like a circus, and yet can we perform it in some way that makes you feel actually, that takes you deeper into the film. And so I think it's been about a year or so that we started building this idea of performing Selma. And it was a no-brainer when it was suggested to me, because not only is the film extraordinary and the score is extraordinary, but the way in which I think both of these geniuses over here think about music as a storytelling device is unique in this film. Representative Lewis asked, why does this make me cry every time? I think that, there's some film music that is almost supposed to exist in a sort of subconscious place, and then there's music that is like a commentary from outside, and then there's music that's, right in the center of the brain of some character. But with this film, and I think I actually have it written in my score, I have parts written in my score where I say, don't look at the screen because you will get emotionally compromised. I think the reason, thank goodness I get to conduct and I get to think about something else for a few bars, but I think the reason why it hits me so hard is that part of the meaning of this score that Jason's written is that when you're watching these scenes of brutality or hope or joy or fragility, the music comes in as if to say, the thing you're experiencing, you're not alone in it. The filmmakers feel it with you. You're right to be experiencing this. This is how we want you to participate in this. And then the people who listen to it get to be witnesses for it, again, in a deeply emotional way, which is why we're also moved that this got sold out and all the people are here. Just coming to a communal artistic event like this is an act of service. And that's why we love doing this, is to make everybody feel like when you watch this, what you're feeling, you're not alone in it.
I think coming to an event like this is an act of service, but I see it as an act of resistance as well. To lean into art that has something to say. But it reminded me sitting here watching it was amazing that sometimes I forgot you all were up there. Yeah. I would be into the film, and then all of a sudden they'd pick up their violins and be like, oh wow, this is happening. It was elegantly kind of intertwined. It was a beautiful tapestry.
I have never been so aware of the smallest movements of my own body. I just know if I start to scratch an itch on my knee, everyone's going to go right to me. So I got to stay as still as I can.
You did a good job.
Thanks.
You did a good job. But it was interesting. I was thinking about just the whole idea of live music and how far we've gotten from that in our everyday lives, particularly when Dr. King calls Mahalia Jackson to hear. It reminded me at that time, if he wanted to hear that song, he would have had to gone to the record player, pulled out vinyl, taken it from the sleeve, played it. It would have been amplified in the room at night. No headphones, no quickly put on your iPad or your phone, no go on the internet. Like literally, she was like his iTunes. Like he wanted to hear. He had to say, I need to hear the Lord's voice. Sister had to get up out of bed and with her scarf on and sing it for him, you know? And, but, you know, just the idea of just watching this orchestra perform it and the ways in which music in our everyday lives have progressed in such a way, even protest music, you know, and the amplification of it while marching in the way that it was used in the civil rights movement as the way that it's used now. In Black Lives Matter and other actions. So this progression of music in different forms and formats, but still the core of it is the emotional connection that we feel to music to spur us on in resistance and action. It's like a reflex, it's like a sense memory. It definitely pushes us forward. What's your favorite protest song?
Much earlier.
Yeah, earlier than this?
We learned We Shall Overcome as students. And when you were saying We Shall Overcome, we could sing it. We were saying so loud and so forceful. There's all these young people. We shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe. It gave you the sense to stand up, to speak up, pick them up, put them down, and march. And gave you this unbelievable sense that the universe was on your side. Yeah.
That's it.
We just have a few more minutes left, but I'm going to throw out an idea and just tell me if you think I'm just totally wild and off base. I think a film like this, you know, there's always the interest to get it right because some people are going to be familiar with the story and some people are not. And so you want to be accurate. You want to give an interpretation that's true and real. And I was wondering what the role that music plays in communicating that kind of message. Because music, we all know, is this universal language. It may seem trite, but it's true. But it's a way in for so many people. And I just wanted to know if any of you had any thoughts about that and, you know, the musical styles and techniques and dealing with modern, contemporary music of the period. How does that really get that message across, that historic realism, so to speak?
I think for me, my interest is there is no true and real. Your true and real is different from my true and real. He was there, right? I'm reading it in a book. He was kind enough to sit with me. Ambassador Young was kind enough to sit with me. Anyone who I can find, the heroes who are still with us, C.T. Vivian was kind enough to sit with me. The King children were kind enough to sit with me and tell me what they remembered. Also, people who march, we forget. Selma is not just, you know, the freedom fighters that we know by name. It only happened because people didn't go to work, left their houses, risked what was happening around them in their everyday lives and communities to stand together. And so those people in Selma, my father was from Lowndes County. Crazy. My father's from Lowndes County, Alabama, the county between Selma and Montgomery. When you see the little kids in the newsreel footage waving, he was one of them. It's my dad. And so he lived in Lowndes County, Alabama. He was 5 years old at the time. And so these are real people to recall and talk to family members and people who were there. We can only try to bring all of that in and interpret as best we can as artists. But when you get into accuracy, like we can all walk out of this room today and everyone will describe this night differently. Because accuracy for him is different than accuracy, her is different from accuracy for him and her and her and her and her, right? Everyone is going to think of it in a different way. So when we get into this idea of what's right, really as artists, we can only try to interpret what feels right to us in the moment. We have to be responsible with as much as we can with the story that we've been told. But I wasn't in the car, you know? Was there a car? I know that they had a conversation, but I thought, you know what? Let's put it in a car. You know what I mean? Let's put it in the car. He told me about the conversations that they had, but he didn't tell me where it happened. But you know what? Wouldn't it be great if you picked them up in a car with the white picket fence in the community in Selma and have them moving, but we don't know where they're going? What will that do to our emotional response? When we add the music, the sound, what will that do to us? Will we listen to him differently? Will we really feel what he's saying to him in a different way? This is what we do, and none of it's accurate. It's art. And that's what it is, right? It's art to get you feel a certain way. So I think we put, even though there was a very respected body in London who looked at all of the biopics and historical dramas for the last 10 years, and Selma rated highest in accuracy in the 90%, where films that had less questions about accuracy, or no one asked, is in the 60s and 70s. I was like, what's the difference between them? Oh, it's me, But why are we getting hinged on accuracy? Oh, okay. But the bottom line is I can get caught up at that, and we can get caught up in that, but the real question is, what did you feel when you watched the film? Did you feel like you gleaned why they did it? What was at risk? How brave they were? What was how we interpret passive a peaceful resistance now, and some people saying, it was soft. You see how strong it was? Did you feel that? Did we get that across? It was these core themes that we communicate that. However we got to it, right? We tried to be as focused and diligent as possible, and I think we did a good job. But the bottom line is it's an artistic interpretation of a time and a feeling. Music is a huge part of that. Sound is a huge part of that. And, we know that we succeeded in the way that the film has been received around the world, but we also know we succeeded when people who were there tell us that they felt a connection to what they saw. How hard is it to look at an actor playing you? That would freak me out. He came to the set. First of all, the young actor almost fainted when he came to the set. You didn't tell anyone you were coming. John Lewis we're shooting a scene about John Lewis. And the real John Lewis walks in, right?
And you introduced me and said,
I said,
John Lewis, meet the real John Lewis. and I believe it, I think the three of us cried together. And that evening in that church, it was a beautiful church, and then a storm came up.
You remember? What?
The lightning started flashing. Yes. The thunder started rolling. The rain came. The lights went out.
Yes.
Yeah. But that was part of the sound.
It was part of the sound. He brought it back. He brought it back to the sound. When we first walked out here, when we were on the wings, he said, Ava, what do I know about sound? Look at you. You brought it right back to the sound.
And with that, I'm going to let Congressman Lewis have the last word.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. You've been unbelievable, just unbelievable. I love the Kennedy Center.
Please.
Thank you. Madam Director, you got it right. I first went to Selma, Alabama after the March on Washington in 1963. I was 23 years old, had all of my hair, and a few pounds lighter. In Selma, people could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin. People stood in unmovable lines. Teachers, lawyers, doctors, housewives, farmers, they were told they could not read or write well enough, had to pass their so-called literacy test. You had a mean sheriff there, you saw it all on the film, by the name of Jim Clark. He was vicious. He was really a sick man. And we had to make it happen. We put our bodies on the line. The brave and courageous people in Selma, in Lowndes County, between Selma and Montgomery, the county was more than 80% African American, but there was not a single registered African American voter in the county. We had to change that. And we did. Selma helped free and liberate hundreds and thousands of people, made it possible for them to participate in the democratic process. You know, I've said from time to time, if it hadn't been for the Voting Rights Act, Jimmy Carter probably wouldn't have been elected president. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. So some of us gave a little blood. Some people lost their homes, their jobs, and other people gave their very lives. So that's why we have to use everything. Drama. And in the movement, we have some drama. Use the arts to take us where we need to go. When we were planning the March on Washington in 1963, there was a man by the name of A. Philip Randolph, who was born in Jacksonville, Florida, moved to New York City, became a champion of civil rights, human rights, and labor rights. And he was there from time to time. Maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this land in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And Dr. King put it another way. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters. If not, we will perish as fools. That's what we are today. So keep the faith. Thank you.
Please thank our panelists. Good night and have a good evening.